Okay, excellent. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar to inaugurate the launch of our new capacity building program in Albania and the Western Balkans. My name is Alain, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I work as the Senior Sustainability Specialist at IHA, which is the International Hydropower Association, and will be the program lead for this initiative. We are pretty excited to be here with you today and have quite a wide array of participants from NGOs, from communities, from governments, from industry, of course, and developers and operators. They come from the region, so Albania and the Western Balkan countries, as well as international developers who have an interest in hydropower development in the region. Before we go on to the agenda, we have a nice packed agenda for us today. I'd first like to thank SECO, the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, for their long-term partnership and financial contribution, without which this webinar and this whole program would not be possible. Great. So today's agenda, we'll first start with a welcome from the CEO of the International Hydropower Association, Eddie Rich, also known as my boss. Then we'll have a presentation from Mr. Patrik Meier, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Switzerland based in Albania, on their work in Albania and as well in the Western Balkans and their involvement in this program. Then we'll have a presentation from KESH, from Ms. Ani Kalfa, who's the head of the environmental and social sector at the Albanian Power Corporation. She'll go over the company overview mission and do a little focus on Scavita, which will be the project that will be assessed as part of this program. Then we'll have a case study from Ms. Rigela Gegprifti. I hope I was able to pronounce your name correctly this time, who's the country manager at the Devoll hydropower owned by Statkraft. Finally, I'll go over the program overview, activities, and timeline, and we'll finish with a Q&A session. It should be an hour and a half. Hopefully we don't go over. You as participants won't have the right to speak or unmute yourselves until the Q&A session. So if you have any questions as the presentation go forth, please feel free to add them directly into the questions or chat boxes in your dashboard. Great. Eddie, I'd like to introduce, well, Eddie, sorry, I know him so personally now because he's my CEO, but the CEO of the International Hydropower Association, Eddie Rich, just for kind of a few words and introductory welcome. On to you, Eddie.
Thank you very much, and I hope, yes, you can see me. Thanks, Alan. I am Eddie Rich. My full-time job is being Alan's boss, and in my spare time, I am the CEO of International Hydropower Association. Thanks for joining us today. We've got well over 50 people I see already online, and maybe a few others will join. So that's already a great number. And thanks to the SECO and the Swiss Development Agency for making all this happen. And we're excited to be at the launch of this project. I wish I was there in Tirana. Isn't it just amazing that we can still all connect and learn together through these screens? They say it takes a child 21 years to grow up. It was 21 years since the World Commission on Dams, which highlighted why so much of this program that Alan's just gone through is so important. The sector has made mistakes. I know that environmental NGOs and community activists in the Balkans remind you of that every day. Some have called for a complete ban on hydropower development. Personally, I'd be quite happy enough if there was no new hydropower, but that's not what the scientists say is needed if we're going to address the climate change challenge and meet energy needs. Hydropower is not only needed for its generation baseload, but it's also its storage and its flexibility to support solar and wind. And that's why IRENA, the latest global renewables outlook, said hydropower capacity will have to grow by 850 gigawatts by 2050, and that's in the next 30 years. So that means a doubling of investment at its present levels. Albania, for example, won't reach its net zero targets without a significant uplift in hydropower to support the clean energy grid. And given the significant lead-in times, which you all know about, that are needed to develop hydropower, we've got to start building now. And we know that's not going to be acceptable unless we can demonstrate that hydropower is not only renewable, but sustainable. What I mean is that the environmental and social impacts are managed responsibly, and that's the aim of this program. At the international level, a multi-stakeholder council of environmental and social NGOs, of government reps, including the Swiss, thank you, Mr. Meier, of international financial institutions, including the World Bank and EBRD, who are on the call today, and companies. They've developed an internationally recognized sustainability framework. It's hydropower sustainability tools. My organization, the IHA, Alain and his gang, they have managed this process and are now developing these tools into an international standard, an international sustainability standard. So with these, there is no excuse for hydropower development projects in 2021 not to be aligned with good environmental and social practice. We're asking our members in IHA to implement the tools in their hydropower development. We're also working with the green finance and project finance communities to make these tools requirements of green bonds and of financing. Now we want to work with the countries like those in the Western Balkans to embed the tools in policies and regulations and ensure that the relevant stakeholders can implement them. So these are the various different pegs to build a solid tent for sustainable hydropower. And that's why we're here today. To work with KESH and other regional stakeholders to build capacity for sustainable hydropower development by training on these tools and undertaking some assessments of projects in the region, like Devoll has been through. The program is designed to support authorities, investors, developers to implement these international good practices in their hydropower development and to use the tools. So it's the right gang talking about the right thing at the right time. We hope that this program can provide a platform for decision makers and NGOs to discuss these issues and to widen awareness about good practice requirements expected of all hydropower projects. And therefore, they will enhance the capacity within the region to build its clean energy supply without compromising its natural ecosystems. So with all of that, I hope we can rewrite the script about hydropower and ensure that it plays its role in fighting climate change and setting a high bar for the sustainability of all renewables. I wish everybody a successful program, and we're really proud to be involved and to be helping. Thank you very much. Back to you, Alain.
Thank you, Eddie. That's a great introduction. I think it's always interesting to start this timeline from the World Commission on Dams report. That was a marking pivotal moment in the history of the hydropower sector. And I think the strategic priorities are now, over the last 20 years, were being implemented. And I feel that this program is one of the ways to implement those strategic priorities. The hydropower sustainability tools in some way are the outcome of that kind of wide body of research that was done during the World Commission of Dams. And now we have a really big challenge ahead of us with the fight against climate change. We're pushing for a lot of solar and wind, but these intermittent renewables need kind of storage capacity behind them. Some countries will choose nuclear. Some countries will choose batteries, lithium-ion batteries, and some will choose hydropower. So now the question is, we know that hydropower is a renewable energy source. Our challenge really is to make sure that it's sustainable, and hopefully this program, and along with the other capacity programs we're working on, will be able to make that vision, Eddie, come true. So thank you so much, and I think that cascades really well into our next presentation, where Patrik will be able to, I'll do an introduction. Patrik Meier, who's the Deputy Head of Mission at the Embassy of Switzerland in Vienna, will be able to kind of take that vision and how the Swiss government is working in Albania to get some of that energy security and clean energy development underway.
Thank you very much.
On to you, Patrik.
Thank you very much, Alain, and welcome everybody. So I'm happy also to be here at the launch of this important initiative. And Eddie already has nicely outlined the rationale for this program and why we are here today. So I won't go really into this as well, although I would have loved to, because it's really that's what the core of today's webinar. But rather I was asked to kind of show what's the Swiss engagement in Albania. I will do this first very broadly, but then go specialize more on what the Swiss history in the energy sector and how we came to actually support this sustainable hydropower capacity building program. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the slide is a bit small, but a Swiss corporation in Albania, it has four main objectives. It is to, it will contribute to a functioning democracy, to improve public services, and to an inclusive, competitive market economy. And all this should hopes we support Albania's European integration. So Switzerland has been active for almost 30 years in those four domains, and the budget has steadily increased to now in the last 3-4 years to approximately 24 million euros a year. And they are divided into 4 domains relating to the outcomes. Domain one is the democratic governance. Second one, economic development and employment. The third, infrastructure services and energy, climate change. I will, in the follow-up, only focus on this one. And the fourth domain is health. So up to the next slide, please. The infrastructure services and energy domain, as its name says, it's focused on that people benefit from high quality infrastructure services and energy supply and efficiency. So it has 2 aspects. In the urban infrastructure service domain, we focus on water supply, wastewater sewage, and solid waste management. In the energy sector, or energy sides, which is again relevant for the publicity here and the audience, is the energy supply and efficiency, as well as increased resilience to climate change. So now I will go to a brief history of Switzerland's engagement in Albania's energy sector, but really brief. So next slide, please. Switzerland started already in 1992 and was one of the first development partners that contributed to the energy sector recovery. And it has so far spent around 40 million Swiss francs in the energy sector in Albania. And so that also shows that there's a long-standing partnership. The first intervention was the rehabilitation of the Fiersa hydropower plant, where we contributed 12 million, a grant, and some of the results are underneath. It really contributed to the securing energy supply. For example, it reduced the number of forced outage hours per day, but it also had positive effect on the climate change, because I mean, if you increase the production of electricity from the hydropower plant, you reduce the amount of imported energy and all the greenhouse gas emission associated with it. Next slide, please. The next intervention was then a dam safety monitoring program, where we supported with 4.3 million. And the result is actually the second point here, and we are very proud of that. KESH now operates a dam safety monitoring system that is in line with the EU standards, and that is actually guarantees 95% of Albania's installed energy capacity. But for me, also a nice result of it, or a nice aspect of how Switzerland normally tries to engage in energy sectors or in all its development work, is that we try, it's the first point, how through a feasibility study that was funded within this project, that we were able to trigger other donors to develop projects of around 100 million euros. So that's a bit, shows how Switzerland is a small donor, but if we can actually do work that triggers other investments afterwards, we're very happy to do that. Next slide, please. After this more energy securing energy supply engagements, we moved on to the gas sector, and we supported the Albanian authorities to establish in the gas sectors, and also with our main tools were TAs, that we provided technical assistance. And with that, we supported the Albanian authorities to renegotiate the host government agreement. And the nice benefit of it was that they got 80 million euros additional for Albania out of these negotiations with TAP. And the main result of our engagement there is actually that all the key stakeholders in the gas sectors now, they have increased their capacity, and that there is an improved framework now in place. So it's also very nice. And I won't go into the positive spillover effects on the economy, because such a huge and, in my view, exemplary also in investments in Albania like TAP. Of course, it has spillovers, like we will also see afterwards with Devoll and others. If they're done in a sustainable manner, I think there is always a good effect on the whole economy. Next slide, please. So with this, I mean, where we started with the securing energy supply, but then Switzerland, in supporting the Albanian energy sector, has seen a shift, and more towards energy efficiency and renewable energy supply, but also addressing climate changes. So the new topics or new thematic focus that we have is mainly on the sustainable use of energy, that is improving energy management, increasing energy efficiency, and also the use of renewable energy sources with the aim of mitigating climate change. We have a project that works on a municipal level that helps them to improve energy management. We have also worked with EBRD, where we do energy auctions in the solar and wind power. And we also have, of course, this project here, the reason why we are all here today, on sustainable hydropower. In our second, one slide back, please, very quickly. On our second leg, that we still have the infrastructure services, we still continue to work in water supply and sewerage services, but also waste management and disaster risk reduction. And this is all coming together, and we're more focused now on the aspect of climate change adaptation. Next slide, please, the last. So with this, now we have arrived in the now of the brief historical outline of Switzerland's engagement. And now, as been mentioned before by Eddie, and Alain will go more in details, is about what is this new project about. And it is, as Eddie said, I mean, Switzerland has been engaged also in the development of the hydropower sustainability tools. But tools are only useful when they are also in the hands of the practitioners, of the people. And that's why with this project, we reach out to authorities, investors, and developers, that they can implement the best practices that are representative in those tools. And how do we do it? We do it through trainings, technical workshops, and assisted self-assessments, and project site visits. And the main question there is, who does it? And here I'm very happy that SECO is able to be part on this board with the International Hydropower Association, with the Albania Power Corporation, KESH, with NGOs and private developers. Next slide. So that was a short introduction from my side, what Switzerland does, and I'm really looking forward to all the future presentations and to see the nice results of this whole interventions. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Patrik. It's impressive to see the amount of work the Swiss government has done throughout the years in Albania, and it's really exciting to be working with your team, Edward specifically these days, to implement this program. So we're quite excited. And as part of this program, one of the other key partners, in addition to SECO and IHA, is KESH, and KESH being the Albanian Power Corporation. And here I'll invite Ani Kalfa, the head of the environmental and social sector from KESH, to provide us a presentation of the overview, kind of mission and strategic object.
Hi, everybody. I am Ani Kalfa. I am the head of the environmental and social sector at the Albanian Power Corporation, which I'll call KESH from now on. In regards to this specific project, for us, it's the next step because we are moving in this direction since many years ago. KESH is a public company, which can you move to the next slide so I can make a quick presentation? My presentation will be concentrated on the description of the KESH as a company, then how the environmental and social components were incorporated into everyday work at our company, how it became a more concrete and a more hands-on based on a budget planning every year for environmental and social activities. Then where we are at the moment now with designing a corporate social responsibility strategy and action plan, and also becoming part of this interesting project on incorporating sustainability tools in hydropower. Next slide. Okay. So the Albania Power Corporation has a mission which is mostly based on the production of energy from hydropower. But the mission is focused on producing electricity with minimum environmental impacts, enhancement of staff competencies, oriented towards company commercialization, and most importantly and most related to this presentation, is a dedicated service to rational use and effective maintenance of generating assets. While electricity is the focus of the company, the KESH also aims to adopt changes in the business environment, technology, financing opportunities, and environmental protection. So KESH is focused on the increase of performance, capacity development, and creation of a culture which is based on constant improvement. Next slide. KESH currently administers the hydropower plants, which are among the largest in the region, which are Fierza hydropower plant, Koman, and Vawideus hydropower plant. They operate based on the cascade scheme, which is the Drina River cascade. And it's all three power plants, for those who are not from Albania, are situated in the northern part of the country, from near the border with Kosovo, which is Fierza, down to the Vawideus power plant, which is near the Adriatic Sea. So how did KESH grasp the concept of environmental and social responsibility and sustainability tools? Random activities have always been organized by the company, but with the receiving of the loan agreement and the funding for the project restructuring of KESH by EBRD in 2016, a new sector of environmental and social responsibility was created. The project also designed the environmental and social action plan based on the findings of the due diligence that was conducted prior to the financing agreement that identified most environmental parameters that could be problematic, and how KESH could invest in environmental and social aspects, such as waste generation, mostly oils, from the existing power plants, because at the moment there are no new power plants. Also social activities and getting the staff integrated into the influence area. So the area near the hydropower plants and the reservoirs, which is a very big area. It covers 4 municipalities, 4 and more, but the closest are 4 of them, with many villages that have inhabitants whose life is closely connected to the functioning of the hydropower plants. Currently, the sector has 4 environmental and social experts. Could you move to the next? In order to get closer to the local communities, this year KESH has also set up a new coordinating office in Shkodra, which is the heart of the Drin Cascade, in order to better improve stakeholder cooperation with the Drini and Buna basin. So what are the current projects that we are actually conducting prior to the beginning of this project in cooperation with the International Hydropower Association? In November 2020, KESH started the real activities on how to incorporate social and environmental actions into a strategy, which we call the corporate social responsibility strategy. This strategy also included an action plan with concrete activities that KESH will implement in the following period from now on. This strategy is also approved by the board of directors of KESH recently, which is good news. So our actions will focus on measures against erosion, environmental and social fields. In environmental field, based on a survey on what are the gaps and what are the opportunities for KESH to invest in the communities where it received most of its services, and the most problematic areas that need to need investment are measures against erosion, waste management, which is a problem of the whole Albania, but waste in reservoirs becomes very unsightly because of floating plastic in the reservoirs. Increasing energy efficiency in schools and public buildings. Also, social activities which are aiming at improving the life of communities, such as recreational, sports, and educational social activities, improving services, access, especially in the villages near the hydropower plants. Next slide. So these are the areas where we'll focus. Other than the investments in regards to the corporate strategy, social strategy, there are some big projects which tend to diversify the activity of KESH, other than producing the hydropower, energy from hydropower, which are at the moment, I have listed the few that are most important. One is the floating photovoltaic plant at Vawideus, which is in the reservoir, which has a very large capacity of 12.9 megawatt power. Also, installation of the photovoltaic plant on the dam, one of the dams of Vawideus hydropower plant. There is also the touristic project, which also will improve the lives of the communities. It's the Common Hydropower Museum and Water Connection Vawideus Common, which does not exist, and will facilitate tourism and the life of the local communities. And also the Scavita hydropower plant. The Scavita hydropower plant was planned back in 1980s or even before, but for some reason it was not implemented. The whole cascade was of the Drine River was the concept of the hydropowers would include the Scavita power plant. This would avoid the inundations that happen frequently in the lower Skoda region, and also would increase the capacity of production and resolve the energy shortages. So this is a scheme of a theoretical scheme of the Scavita power plant. It will be the first situated in the upper area of the cascade and near the border with Kosovo. Okay, next slide. The Scavita power plant project started the pre-feasibility phase in 2017. Now we are at the feasibility stage. Due to the study, the designer has come up with 5 alternatives, which are mainly two alternatives, which is the lower level and the higher level of reservoir. As you can see in this table, it's a summary of the capacities that each alternative offers. There are also moderated alternatives in order to prevent the inundation or to improve the safety of the dams and the lower Skoda region. Currently, the feasibility study has not concluded officially, but you can see that we are talking about the larger inundation area for the biggest alternative, which is the most feasible regarding energy production, but also provides flood mitigation for downstream dam safety, and it reduces the cost for investing in existing hydropower plants for dam safety and rehabilitation. Okay, next slide. So in this graph, you can see the energy production of each of the alternatives. As you can see, of course, it's the larger reservoir produces more energy. The second best is alternative number 5, which also is moderated in regards to social and environmental effects. Okay, next one. So we are at the good time and at a good opportunity to include the sustainability tools in the Scavita hydropower plant design. And the cooperation with the International Hydropower Association, since it is the first meeting, will enable us to properly implement these tools and incorporate them in the hydropower plant. Given that KESH will be the authority to implement the project, hopefully, or not. Okay, that was my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ani, for that. I think that was a really good overview of KESH's work, and more importantly, the upcoming work together, and that focus on the Scavita project, which is quite an important and strategic project for Albania, and especially that it's part of a larger cascade. It's going to be a big project ahead with a lot of interesting stakeholders involved. The Ministry of Infrastructure and Energy in Albania, as well as the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, are also kind of key stakeholders as part of this program to make sure we all understand the project impacts and how to work together to be able to manage and mitigate those impacts from the perspectives of, tourism, but as well as operational output. It's sometimes difficult to find that balanced look, and hopefully these tools or this program will be able to provide that common language. So going from one project to the other, the Scavita to the Devoll project, and now I'll invite Ms. Rigela Gegprifti, who's the country manager, country head at the Devoll hydropower project in Albania, owned by Statkraft. So on to you. I welcome you to the virtual stage.
Thank you very much also to the organizers for this event. It's quite an interesting event and also quite important considering also the hydropower capacity that Albania in itself has as a country. But I'm very pleased to go through together with you also in our case of Devoll hydropower. I'm not sure, Alain, will I have control on the presentation or will you do it for me?
Yeah, I will give you control now. And we'll see if that works. If not, I can do it on your behalf.
Thanks.
So try that out. Yes, perfect.
Well, I couldn't start this presentation by also mentioning who we are. Statkraft is a Norwegian company with an international reach in at least 16 other countries, in addition to our presence in Norway. We are currently Europe's largest generator of renewable energy, with a quite strong commitment towards our global challenge on climate topics. And our company is committed in providing clean energy for over a century, long before climate change was a crisis. And currently we have invested 100% of our growth entirely in renewables. And this is what it will continue also in the future. When it comes to hydropower, well, in itself, hydropower, as shared already in the beginning by the CEO of the IHA, it will not lose its role. And one of the core pillars of our Statkraft strategy is actually optimizing and expanding our hydropower fleet and taking, as well as forming the basis for Statkraft as an integrator of renewable energy. We definitely see in a global landscape also the forecasted increase of solar and wind development. And this change, this shift will require also sustainable solutions on how those new technologies in hydropower generation and energy generation can balance each other. And indeed, the role of hydropower and even pumping storages as intermittent, environmental friendly balancing opportunities will continue to exist. When it comes, sorry, Alain, I need your help to go back. When it comes to Statkraft presence in Albania, our journey has started in the year 2008 with the signing of a concession agreement. And that concession agreement was ratified in 2009 by the Albanian Parliament. Continuing further also with one of the key developing hydropower projects in Albania with the Devoll hydropower project, which is currently composed by at least 2 hydropower plants, Banja and Moglica, with a combined installed capacity of approximately 269 megawatt and an average production of approximately 700 gigawatt hours in a year. We are currently already in the operations phase and we are an active energy trader already since 2016. The first hydropower plant that was constructed as part of our Devoll hydropower project is Banja. Banja has an installed capacity of 72 megawatt and an annual production of 250 gigawatt hours. The plant is located at the foot of an 80 meters high dam, and the reservoir is stretching 16 kilometers along the Devoll River up to the town of Gramsh, with a live reservoir volume of approximately 180 million cubic meter and a surface of approximately 14 kilometers square. Whereas the second one, it's Moglica hydropower plant. This is actually the largest hydropower we have in the scheme, with an installed capacity of 197 megawatt and an annual production of 490 gigawatt hours. The plant in itself has an underground powerhouse, which is fed with water from the reservoir through a head raised tunnel of 11 kilometers. Moglica Dam is 167 meters high and is considered the world's tallest asphalt core dam. The reservoir live volume in itself, it's approximately 150 million cubic meter and the surface of approximately 7 kilometers square. But how our story began in Albania and how it was developed? Well, the key components of our projects were outlined in 4 key phases. The first was, of course, the tendering procedure that was initiated by the Albanian government. Followed thereafter, upon granting of the concession, also with the preparatory works, with the pre-construction phase. And Statkraft, being also a member of UN Global Compact and also pledging adherence to the 10 principles that include human rights, work standards, environment, and anti-corruption, had already planned and implemented in this phase already with focus towards mapping, addressing impacts of potential activities during the construction phase on the environment, on the climate, on the society, as well as elaborated, detailed, and extensive programs for following up health, safety, human rights, as well as compliance. During exactly this phase that had, I would say, a 4-strong year with quite intense labor throughout all the area of the project, in addition to the technical field investigations and detailed design, strong focus was placed also in preparing the strategic environmental assessment, as well as the environmental social impact assessment, with participation and engagement of all the relevant stakeholders, with no limitations, community participants, local as well as central stakeholders of authorities, NGOs, and so on. The construction in itself was definitely one of the key challenges, considering the fact that both hydropower plants were at a certain point overlapping construction activities, being Banja hydropower plant in operation, as well as also Moglica hydropower plant in construction. But it was managed successfully, considering that from the sustainability perspective, all main contracts, irrespective whether those were towards the civil works or electromechanical steelworks, as well as the relevant sub-contracts, were prepared by including relevant sustainability elements as mandatory requirements. The construction activities in itself followed a detailed environmental and social management program that was integrated and became part also of the contractors' as subcontractors' performance, with systematic monitoring as well as management by Statkraft, established project organization. At the same time, in parallel of the key activities at both sites, at Banja and Moglica, additional projects such as the construction of the replacement infrastructure, new roads as well as upgrade of existing roads, potable water supply systems, as well as also the wastewater treatment plant that was constructed and is now operating in Gramstown. Those were the parallel activities conducted with strong focus again towards those principles in sustainable development. At the same time, the implementation of social support continued also towards the communities and those families or households that were impacted from the project itself, in order to mitigate as well as compensate and minimize at the very end also those potential project impacts. Further, we did have a quite extensive environmental program with, I would say, quite considerable forestation activities, as well as also water quality and water monitoring development, as well as also environmental infrastructure being in place. At the same timing, exactly in the overlapping of Banja being in operations in 2017, whereas Moglica construction activities continuing, we actually also participated and asked International Hydropower Association for an assessment exactly towards the sustainability that we implemented throughout all the stages. Right now, we are in an operational phase, and this does not mean that the focus is now lower. We are definitely contributing as we speak towards a green renewable landscape for the future, for all of us, definitely also for the country where we are existent and we operate in. And we are, again, an active energy market player. Sustainability is in itself core of all our operations, and for us it means to operate in a way that carefully balances various societal needs and integrate such considerations also into our business processes. The environmental and social programs that have started already in the pre-construction phase, those continue now with a new scope, and that scope is an environmental and social action plan during the operations. This again showcases our care towards the environment and the communities. Sorry, I think in reference to the hydropower sustainability assessment protocol, we are a strong believer that an independent assessment from a third party assessing exactly the implementation of sustainability standards supports identifying good practices, establish procedures that facilitate transfer of good expertise, as well as also creates a very robust basis for new projects to be implemented in a sustainable way. And for us as Statkraft, it is a prerequisite to have definitely an independent review, and at the same time also follow our approach, which is improve on a daily basis, have as I would say core activity sustainability, and seek to also learn from the best experiences and implement those. What we have done in Albania, it is 2 state-of-the-art infrastructure projects in the southeast Albania. We have contributed towards an efficient usage of renewables potential, as well as we believe also for the Albanians' ambitions under the EU Initiative 2030 on climate and energy framework. This project in itself has been completed in full respect to the environment and contribution to the society that we live in. And we continue with the same commitment that we had already in the starting phase of this project in implementing our social and environmental action plans throughout all the period. And this will definitely not be stopped right now. What we believe that sustainable hydropower development can contribute is exactly as this picture shows. The strong support provided in connectivity for approximately 50,000 inhabitants that live in our Devoll project area. This is the main contribution towards accessibility, identification of new sectors that can be further contribute to the society and economy in the region, like, for example, also having those hotspots exactly in the Gramsh area or even in the Malish area, having those hotspots accessible as well as also manageable with direct impact towards the community and with clear focus towards employment. We continue also during our operations phase with the same commitment towards the goals that we have set in the aquatic biodiversity monitoring and water quality monitoring, which are part of our monthly basis water sampling as well as analysis being conducted, not only at centers or universities in Albania, but also with support of international expertise, like, for example, the support that we are being provided with by the Laboratory for Control of the Environmental Pollution of the Chemistry Department at the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki in Greece. Whereas in terms of deforestation, we have completed already 276 hectares of afforestation in Banja area, whereas we are already at 425 hectares already afforested in our Moglica area, and we continue in monitoring activities towards also the survival rate of the parcels, hoping that we will be successful, same as we were in the construction also for the environment, our environmental projects. A key element in sustainability is actually community needs that needs to be tackled already, correctly mapped in the early phase and implemented by having into consideration what are the needs. In our social development, we have already concentrated towards the community. We have concentrated towards needs that the area had with our professional training programs, with social programs towards different schools in the area, as well as also with an extensive program towards support given to the resettled households in new areas. Due to the construction activities of our projects, we have completed the accommodation for 30 families in Banja area, as well as also 21 families in Moglica area. And right now, as we speak, we continue also the construction of new apartments, 28 new apartments. What we have committed already in the 2010, when the first public information center was opened in the project area, was transparency of information, being there a good neighbor for the community, as well as also supporting with our initiatives. That continues also now in the operational phase, irrespective of the fact that the project has been completed and we are now in a new area. It's in full power generation and trading activities. At the same time, our public information center continues to be within our project area, providing support, advice, as well as also information whenever those stakeholders are needing it. When this project first started, there were different ambitions stated from different internal stakeholders. And one of the ambitions was to be able to transfer technology, expertise, and know-how to local Albanians. I strongly believe that now this technology, expertise that has been already learned on job training through the construction activities in Banja and Moplica, through different robust programs that were implemented on sustainable development of other projects in our area. Now this has been transferred to many young Albanians that are, I have to confess, the next generation of ambassadors in sustainable project development. I should have left it to you, Alain.
Sorry, Rigela, is that the end of the presentation?
And no, I'm trying to go back to the slide.
Okay.
Well, now that we are already in the operational phase and our construction activities have fully completed, we will continue to contribute towards a sustainable future through exactly how we conduct business. Our core business activity is exactly delivering renewable energy, as well as also how we practice as well as we behave towards our business processes by acting in a sustainable and a responsible manner. I have actually also to note that considering the renewable energy potential that Albania has, being that specifically in solar, the positive developments that we have observed in the market design in Albania, but also in the region, as well as also what we have seen in current and future planned interconnections with neighboring countries, we believe that there is an enormous potential for further optimization of our assets, and we are in an early phase assessing our Devoll cascade optimization. But whatever actions we will undertake, that will be always done by taking always into consideration the sustainability of even a pre-design project. And this will be actually the last page. We as a company, we are committed towards sustainability and responsible business practices. We always try to understand the impacts. We always try to implement measures whenever needed, as well as also make follow-ups, monitor, and have those as an integrated part of our daily work. Being honest about both the dimensions, sustainability as well as responsible business practices, as well as also seeking always to improve how we do things. So this is key for our company. And this is actually also our approach towards sustainability. We are already contributing to the future to providing renewable energy. And we believe that definitely the renewables is the future, and the hydropower will continue to have its key role, especially in Albania, considering also the high potential on hydrological resources. That could be actually also a shifting change towards a regional concept that would be fitting also the sustainability development goals, UN long-term goals, towards also cleaner energy, as well as also climate change. That was all from my side, and the word is back to you, Alain.
Thank you very much, Rigela. That was honestly a great overview and very practical overview of all the kind of good practices happening at Devoll project. It made me think, you know, the last statement, I think this is becoming the trend when we think about hydropower and the wider scheme of, meeting the clean energy targets and global climate change emissions, is that hydropower has a role to play. Depending on the country, depending on the resources available, it won't always be the right solution, but in many countries it will be the right solution. And programs like the ones that Rigela just showed from the Devoll are great examples of how hydropower projects can continue bringing benefits, not only in the form of renewable energy, but also to communities and to even to the national kind of economy through the income they generate. This also makes me think of the World Commission on Dams reports again. Eddie did a really good job of framing this whole webinar through the lens of the World Commission of Dams, and one of the strategic priorities was benefit sharing. And I think the Devoll project, and through all the kind of slides we just saw from Relish, really showed how the community was not only engaged but benefited from this project. And this is at this stage in the history of hydropower, every hydropower project should be either designed, constructed, and implemented at the same level with that community engagement involved. So based on that, and thank you again, Rigela, we can move on to the final presentation, which I will be able to give for you, which is just a program overview, focusing on the actual capacity building program that we'll be doing over the next year. Then on the activities and the timeline. A lot of this will be around the hydropower sustainability tools, which we've heard quite a lot. We heard it when Ani was talking about the Scavita project, but we also heard it when Rigela was speaking about the Devoll project. So hopefully in this next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll have a better understanding of these tools and what the program will look like over the next year, and how you can get involved as well. That's the most exciting part, I'd say. So the agenda, I'll give you guys a brief overview of IHA, so the International Hydropower Association. Then that will cascade into the hydropower sustainability tools, and then finally the program overview, activities timeline, and your involvement, potential involvement. It's up to you if you want to join this program or not. So the International Hydropower Association is a non-profit membership association. We have over 100 organizations that we consider our members. They represent over 120 countries and around 450 gigawatts of installed capacity. That's a lot of people, that's a lot of representation, and that's a lot of gigawatts. Together, we have the mission of advancing sustainable hydropower. That involves a lot of different things that we'll see over time, but what it looks like is that's 25 years of building research and networks. We're based in London, where I'm currently alone at an office, actually, due to COVID restrictions. But our base is here in London, but we have, at this stage, staff scattered around the world. We also have people we consider partners. These aren't our direct members, but people we work with constantly. These include the World Bank, the UN, and NGOs such as the Nature Conservancy, IUCN, and the World Wildlife Fund, who we work with quite regularly. At the International Hydropower Association, we probably have three main areas of focus: sustainability, research and policy, and networking. Today, research and policy is really about kind of working with governments to implement and embed good practices within their local and regional legislations. Networking is providing that platform for discussion. Developer from Colombia would love maybe to learn lessons learned from Rigela, a developer in Albania. We provide that pathway for those types of discussions to exist. And finally, why we're all here today, sustainability. Looking at the impacts, both positive and negative, that hydropower can have, and how we manage and mitigate those and develop hydropower schemes sustainably. We, a sub-branch of IHA, are the sustainability team. It's myself and three other colleagues who are on the call with us today behind the scenes making all this work. What we do is we focus on capacity building, which is this example of such a program, on training. So we have a training academy that's virtual now and available online if anyone is interested to join those. And then the base of all of this is our hydropower sustainability tools. So for those of you who don't know the hydropower sustainabilities, or maybe have never even heard of them, I'll give us a few slides. But first, I want to put hydropower in its context. I think Eddie did a really good job of explaining the role that hydropower has to have, especially with with different intermittent renewables such as solar and wind. And in this picture, we see the holistic picture of hydropower. I think it's really easy when you're a developer or operator, or even a government agency managing the implementation of a hydropower project, to get focus in the details of the project. You know, when you're on field or on site and you're doing construction, it's hard to think of all the sustainability or all the other connected aspects of a hydropower scheme. So you get focused on, you know, just making sure the construction aware that no one dies on site and all these other health and safety protocols. But something in that silo we create of the hydropower project, we forget that there's also upstream impacts and downstream impacts. These can be to ecosystems, to rivers, but also to communities around. So we have to have this wider perspective when we think about a hydropower scheme and the impacts and its area of influence. And how it, you know, in the future, how it's going to provide that flexible and renewable and sustainable storage capacity to integrate with other renewables. So it's important to see hydropower through multiple lenses. At IHA, what we try to do is divide them into four. Obviously, these are not all-encompassing, as we'll see in a few slides, but we want to think about the social implications a hydropower scheme may have. We want to think about the environmental mitigations, water quality, sedimentation and erosion, about the technical, you know, the operational efficiency, how the asset actually performs, and also economic, like and financial. Is the PPA working? Are we making enough benefit? Are we making enough revenue? Is this project even financially sound? So we have to have these perspectives all the time, not just the technical, not just environmental, but all of these working together because they're all very much interconnected. So this brings us to the hydropower sustainability tools, which brings these kind of different perspectives into life. We have three tools currently. One is a guideline and two are assessment tools. The guidelines are a really good document to have an overview of, you know, what good practice is across a wide array of topics, and the assessment tools are much more practical for the practitioner. They're there to really provide guidance and criteria on what a hydropower scheme needs, what kind of performance requirements is needed on the different sustainability topics. We'll go a little deeper on what these sustainability topics look like. So we talked about social, environment, technical, and economic. Here are some examples of those topics. Under social, you know, we just talked about project benefits. But there's also issues around resettlement, indigenous peoples, public health, cultural heritage. And in a place like the Western Balkans, especially with a project like Scavita, which may cause resettlement, these topics are going to really have to be well understood to implement a project that reaches a level of international good practice. When it comes to environment, obviously, first thing that clicks is the biodiversity and invasive species. You know, we also think about water quality, river health, downstream flows, e-flows. I think once again for Albania and other Western Balkans regions, and this is why it's good to have the Ministry of Environment and Tourism along, biodiversity is not just a critical kind of value in terms of its mitigation of climate change as well, but it's also cultural value and value for tourism, which is also linked to income for governments. So as hydropower projects are located more and more in remote areas, it's crucial that biodiversity is well managed and even hopefully increased through ecological corridors that maybe didn't exist before. Then we have technical, you know, demonstrated need, strategic fit, siting and design, very important siting and design. You know, is this project well suited here in this specific river cascade, or is it to be more higher up in the upstream area of the river where you'll have less impacts but more head, so better operation or output as a whole. Then hydrological resource, others. Economic, you know, that involves governance, procurement, and financial and economic viability, which I mentioned earlier. I think which is really interesting, those are the topics our tools assess and have criterias, performance criteria on. Then we have these things called cross-cutting issues. You'll probably notice that the words human rights, gender, and legacy issues didn't come up in these specific topics. These are because we view them as cross-cutting issues, which means they come throughout the topics. For example, human rights affects both indigenous peoples, but also communities and livelihoods. So that becomes a cross-cutting issue. Yeah, so this is an overview of our little framework of how we view sustainability and the different topics that we assess. What the tools provide and how they work is they're comprehensive. They cover a wide range of environmental and social and technical and topics. They cover all stages, is really important. So they start from the early stage when you're thinking more about pre-feasibilities, in preparation stage when you're looking at design and EIAs, implementation is another word for construction, and operation. For example, for the Scavita project, we'll probably be looking at the preparation stage, reviewing EIA reports because we're still in early stage of the development of that project. The process of an assessment is always evidence-based. It's not just a site visit and then you go. It's a site visit with a lot of interviews with affected communities and a lot of review of the documentation of the project. We call that process triangulation of evidence. And through triangulation, you can make sure that there's no gaps in the information you're getting. One big component is really the interviews with affected community members who may sometimes have a different perspective than the developer or government in that case. It's a set of tools applicable to all projects. What we mean by all projects is not only their size, so really it's size agnostic, but for run-of-river, for storage projects, and also has been used for pump storage projects. It's a way to assess their performance, and also it's a way to access finance through funding from donors like the World Bank, but also from green bond mechanisms out there. It's important to know, and it's one of probably my favorite side, and one of the reasons I joined IHA, is who developed these tools. So from 2007 to 2010, there was a global consultation to develop these tools and to make sure that the different parties were happy with what the good practice requirements in these tools were, that they provided truly a common language amongst NGOs, governments, and industry of what good practice looks like. This is a very difficult, like multi-stakeholder governance and multi-stakeholder consensus is a very challenging, I'd say, to really complete and to achieve. And I think the tools are a really good demonstration of how that's done in practice. So in the development phase, you had organizations like the World Wildlife Fund, the World Bank, the Equator Principles, IHA, country governments like Germany, Zambia, China. You also had Oxfam, Nature Conservancy, and other banks like Citi. That was done during 2007, 2010. Over time, that same structure of multi-stakeholder kind of development became our governance. Like these are the people, well, you can call them our board, who makes decisions on the tools. Currently, that includes the World Bank again, IHA, Energy de Portugal, so the largest developer in Portugal, again, World Wildlife Fund, International Union for Conservation of Nature, IIED, NORAD, and the Swiss government, thank you again, Patrik, and Voigt, which is a big manufacturer. We also have academic institutions like the Hunan University in China, and as well as the government of Nepal. Here we understand that the tools provide this common language amongst this wide group of people to be able to communicate in a way that, it's not like, oh, we view sustainability this way or we view it that. No, they view it in a common view that we can then build good projects on. Because if we're too busy fighting over what good practice means, we'll never actually be able to implement any form of good practices. Some of the value of the tools that we've seen through their implementation over the last 10 years involve performance and risk management, of course. A lot of the biggest risks in hydropower projects are not technical risks, they're more so environmental and social risks. So a lot of bottlenecks happen with local communities not feeling engaged, they'll set protests, and that will cost up to, we'll say 200 million. I'm just throwing a number out there, but 200 million for a project, and those delays that can really lead to big financial downfalls. So that's a risk management by doing an assessment with the tools. Like we said, we can access finance through partnerships with the World Bank, who are really strongly involved in the development of these tools, all the way to green bonds. Then it's a way to benchmark. If you're a developer that has projects across a number of countries, you can compare your different projects through these because it's not a regional or national system. It's an international level where it transcends the kind of ideas of, just complying with national regulations, which we all know could be stricter in one and then softer in another country, depending on their history and of hydropower development, where they are on that chain of development. So benchmarking is really important. Then building capacity, of course, and this is exactly why we're here today in this webinar. And one of my favorites is the social license to operate. If communities do not give you the consent for a project, you will probably face an issue at one point in the lifetime of the project. It is really good to get social license to operate. Shouldn't be viewed as a mitigating risk. It should be viewed as an opportunity. Once communities are engaged and part of the decision-making process, this project is set for glory. And I think that I really stand by that. And hopefully these tools can provide that platform to get that social license to operate. Historically, where these projects have been assessed are across the globe. I think we have every single continent represented. In the middle, you will see Devoll, Albania, right after the two green. The greens ones are the HSG, which is our small gap analysis tool, and then the HSAP, which is our larger full assessment. We want to see higher numbers coming from the Western Balkans. So after the Devoll project, hopefully we'll be seeing some come from Serbia, from North Macedonia, from Montenegro, Kosovo. The list can go on. So for today's program, it's really a collaboration between IHA and SECO that's been over 4 years now. We've worked in Ghana in the Volta Basin Assessment. We worked in Colombia. We'll be working in Colombia. We'll be working in Tajikistan. We've also worked in Indonesia historically. So over the last 2 years, we've been working in Indonesia with Bappenas, which is their Ministry of Planning and Development, we assessed one of their projects, the Pelosica assessment. And then we've also done a lot of these types of capacity building and training, which is going to be the next activities as part of this program. What's really interesting about Indonesia is that this is probably the most long-standing program and could be a good example of success in a program in Albania, is that we have an assessor team who can use our tools that come from different ministries in Indonesia, and we call them the National Assessor Team, and they are experts on our tools, and then can use that to elevate the sustainability performance of projects in Indonesia. So that could be a really good outcome of this program as well, if we could get representatives from KESH, the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Energy, as well as Statkraft and maybe some NGOs as well, to make that national assessor team, so then we can move forward and elevate the sustainability performance of these projects, both existing and new. The cooperation is twofold. There's both an assessment fund and there's a capacity building aspect. A quickie slide on the assessment fund is, it's a fund that will be over 4 tranches over 4 years. The goal is to fund or partially fund 48 HESG assessments in SECO and CDC countries. To confirm for everyone on this call, Western Balkans, all the Western Balkan countries are part of this list. So if you're on this call right now, this webinar, if you're a developer, an operator in the region, a consultant working for a project, or a government official who's managing the implementation, you can apply for this fund to get 50% of your costs co-funded by the Swiss government to do an HESG assessment. We'll put contact details at the end if this is interesting for you. And of course, such an assessment can give you access to green bonds or other climate-related financial instruments. In terms of capacity building, of course, this is a word that's been used a lot. We view it as a two-way dialogue. It has to be, because if it's not, then you're not really building capacity. You're giving capacity. You're not building from the bottom up, which I think is a very important distinction to make. So I think capacity is the idea to make informed choices, define priorities, plan futures, but also build on local strengths. I think you have to see what the current state of kind of just institutional capacity, resources, knowledge, and build and strengthen on what's already there to have this long-term impact of what, it's not just coming in and out, and I think the Indonesia program is a good example how we see capacity building starting from just equipped meetings to this national assessor team that is now running their own projects. The picture in the background is actually from one of the first workshops with the Indonesian stakeholders. So that's a roundtable that hopefully COVID restrictions are lifted. We'll have a similar one in Tirana in Albania. So we follow some form of a results chain where you think about your impact. So, we want more sustainable hydropower to be developed. And to get there, you need to define your outcomes and outputs. So a lot of this is just, identifying the, stakeholder mapping. Who's the right people we want to be working with? So national governments, local and regional bodies, developers as well. We want to make them to do assessments, understand good practice. This will hopefully lead to increased skills to implement projects, enhanced resources to also kind of improve those projects. And then that institutional capacity to inform regulation is really important. We can embed some of the principles of the tools into local or regional regulations and legislation. And finally, improved access to information. Sometimes it's not that information isn't there, it's people's access to it. These could be language barriers as well. So a lot of our tools are and continue to be translated into local languages. Now, for the important stuff, is what our program looks like coming up. So we're starting with this webinar, which is the launch of the program. The next coming up is the certified user training. This provides an overview to the tools we have just discussed. Then with the local group, so with KESH and maybe Statkraft as well, if they wanted to have a deeper partnership in this program, we'll think about what are the topics, sustainability topics, the list of almost 20 we saw previously, that are the most valuable to Albania and the Western Balkans. This could be resettlement, it could be biodiversity. We'll focus on that for training. Then that knowledge will help us to do a assisted self-assessment of the Scavita project. So with that new knowledge, and we'll get our experts to support us, we'll be able to assess the performance and score that project against our tools. Then we'll take that same group of students, give them accreditation training so they can become assessors, and through their new knowledge, we'll do a reassessment of the Scavita and see if they were able to resolve the gaps that were first identified. Over time, this group of national local assessors can become recognized as a national assessor team, similar to how it was done in Indonesia, and could be a great output or outcome of this project. The timeline looks like this. Obviously, we have to remain flexible considering COVID, of course, but we've gone virtual with a lot of these events. As you see, we're doing it right now virtually. But our kickoff mission, we changed it to a webinar, so that's officially what's going on. Previously, we had inception meetings with KESH and the other main stakeholders involved. And moving forward, so maybe sometime in May, we'll have our first training, and then sometime in June, our second training. And then as you go forth into 2022, we'll be looking at the Scavita project in more detail with that specific group. Who's involved currently is KESH, of course, IHA, and SECO, as well as the ministry, EBRD, are playing kind of supporting roles and just making sure that we understand, because they're both, EBRD has a presence in there as well, so to make sure that our programs are aligned in any way, Statkraft and the two ministries. And importantly, how you can get involved. If you want to be an active part of the program, feel free to email us at sustainability@hydropower.org. The applicants are not limited to Albania. As you saw, it's Western Balkans, so we have Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Bosnia, Kosovo, and Albania. I think those are the 6 that are included. Sorry if I missed one, but I think it was okay. And if you're interested as a developer government to apply for the HSG fund, that co-funding opportunity for HGSG assessments, also feel free to email us. We're happy to have calls and discuss in more time. Cool. Okay, we went a little bit over time, but right now we have, maybe 10 minutes for a quick Q&A if any of the participants have questions. So your options to ask questions, you can raise your hand, you all have that option, or you can write in the questions box, should you have any questions. And yeah, feel free. Try to always make the simple questions simple, less of a statement, more of a question, and if possible, direct them to a speaker. And at this stage, I do invite the other panelists to show their videos one last time and see if we have any questions from the audience. Okay. So I see one question from Catherine McCallop. Thank you. Are you translating the tools into Albanian then? This is a good question. I think as we move forward, because we've already talked about this with Ani, and you were saying, Ani, that there's a lot of members in your team who don't speak English. And we do want those team members involved. Yeah, that we want those team members involved. So I think we'll talk with SECO to see if we can finance the translation to Albanian, but that's definitely something we'll consider doing. Thank you for the question. Okay. I hope people are comfortable with the platform. Maybe the raising hand option isn't too easy. But I have a question. Maybe, well, these are questions we received previously for people who weren't able to to join the webinar. One was for Statkraft, so for Rigela. Someone was interested actually that Statkraft was part of this program, and they wanted to know what you envisioned your involvement as. Yeah, so I don't know if you wanted to answer that question.
Well, in terms of future development in the hydropower sector, we, as shared in the presentation in the beginning, we see the potential globally that there are feasible hydropower projects that can be developed sustainable. And those are some initiatives that are already being implemented by Statkraft in other countries where we operate. Whereas in Albania, our focus would be to diversify our portfolio. We will look with interest towards new potential solar wind development in the country, and as shared with you also potential optimization of our current owned assets, both Bai and Moglice.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And as well as, I think we talked about this, Rigela, but if you have staff members or you yourself are interested in the trainings, you're more than invited to join us as well.
I believe that it's going to be a contribution if staff of Statkraft Albania would be joining those sessions, exactly due to the key expertise they possess, considering also the long-term programs that they have been gone through already in the early phases up to now. We are speaking about 13 years of experience, and sometimes we believe that the best expertise you gain when you do the on-job training. So that sharing of experience might be valuable during also the training and workshops.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point. I hope this didn't come off in the presentation, but we view trainings as really a place for everyone to be teacher and everyone to be taught. You know, it's not just the kind of experts who come and teach the ones who are, sitting behind the table writing all the notes. It's no, everyone is coming with their own baggage of experience, and everyone's going to teach each other. So it becomes quite an interactive kind of participatory approach to the training. And I think your staff members would be great resources in terms of that. So yeah, we have another question on translations again. So are they translated in other languages? They are. Currently, as I said previously, is not in Albanian, but this might be an output of this program. But they are translated into French, at least the main protocol document, into French, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Vietnamese, yeah, and a few other languages there. So we're aware of the need for, if it's a global set of tools, they need to reach a global audience. So I think translations is a key part of that process. Thank you for that question. Okay, I'll be monitoring the chat. Yeah, okay, so there's another question. Could you talk more about the link between SEA, ESIA, and the IHA sustainability tools? I guess this falls to me again a little bit. So for people who don't know the terminology, SEA is a strategic environmental assessment, ESIA is an environmental and social impact assessment, and IHA sustainability tools are obviously the tools. So as you saw in one of the slides, we have a separate set of topics. One of them is actually environmental and social impact assessment. So we do not create an SEA or ESIA, but our tools assess the quality of an EIA and ESIA. So in that sense, when we're doing a project and there's a submission of an EIA, our accredited assessors, through the kind of scoring statements of our tools, but also through their own experience, are able to rate the quality of an EIA and make sure that it's up to international standard. Great, more questions. When will be the next renewable energy project in Albania? Ani, do you want to try to tackle that question? When will be the next renewable energy project in Albania?
Well, I can only talk about KESH.
Yeah.
We have two in baking. One is the floating floating photovoltaic plant in Bauides Reservoir, 12.5 megawatt power, and the other is the photovoltaic plant on the dam of Bushati, which is one of the Valideus dams, 5 megawatt power.
Yeah, and that's great. I think those are both also innovative projects because floating PV is being done under the covers a little bit, but more and more it's becoming at the center stage of the kind of renewable energy revolution, where you have the kind of storage capacity of hydropower directly linked with solar generation, and not even directly linked on the reservoir itself. So these are definitely interesting projects that we'll probably consider as part of the program as well. No, that's great.
And I might add to this question, Patrik from the Swiss Embassy. If I'm well informed, EBRD is also supporting the Albanian government for another auction in wind panel. I think it's already published, wind power and also solar panels. So there are other projects in preparation or already, I think, announced. So, but I think the auctions are not yet taking place, but there is things in the pipeline. So
excellent, thank you, Okay,
if you allow me, Alain, maybe also to add that also one other innovative floating solar is actually also in its way to be at least implemented in the first phase, is the floating solar that we have as a project at our Albania reservoir. It's actually only 2 megawatt. But we trust that should that project also be commercially viable, it can find grounds that can be supportive also from the environmental aspect to be developed also in other areas. I would like only to confirm and to strengthen further what Patrik noted. Albania is the land of opportunities, and there will be coming new projects, being those in not only solar and wind, but there are opportunities also on a better management towards also hydropower development, and definitely one of the most interesting developments in the hydropower sector in Albania is of course Scavita.
Yeah, agreed 100%. It's interesting to see how many projects are going to be developed in the Albania alone and the Western Balkans on this floating PV. There's definitely going to have to do more and more research on the environmental and impacts of that, the eutrophication on, the lack of oxygen under the panels. Does that affect water quality and eutrophication? It's going to be really interesting projects moving forward. I think we have time for one more question. There's a lot more. It all comes up to the end, really. I can answer one quickly, so then we'll have a napkin for a second question. Is there a position on hydropower development in protected areas? Really good question. This is a very sensitive topic for hydropower development in general. We've actually developed a working group, a multi-stakeholder working group to tackle this issue. So what we're doing is developing some form of good practice guide on what it looks like to develop hydropower that impacts in protected area. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in, it could also be around a hydropower protected area, like either upstream or downstream of a protected area. As well as there's the issue sometimes of a hydropower project was in the protected area before it became protected and actually led to the protection of that area. So there's a lot of intricacies around that, and IHA is working with a lot of kind of multi-stakeholder group to hopefully put out a guide on that. And those same principles will hopefully be incorporated in the programs we do, especially the one we're doing here in Albania. And then one question to Ani. In order to improve flexibility in storage, does the feasibility study of Scavita include pumping? Do you know if there's pumping included in the feasibility study?
It has been considered, but at the end, no. Pump storage, no.
Okay, well, great. Well, we just hit the 30 mark. I want to thank everyone again for a successful, hopefully not too many tech problems, a good webinar. And again, I wanted to, thank all the panelists. Thank you very much for speaking today. Your presentations were great, and I'm really happy we were able to have this opportunity despite the kind of distances happening with COVID, but I guess the virtual distance is actually not far at all. So thank you all very much. And for the participants, if you'd like to have an active part in the program or apply for the HSG fund or just to learn more about our capacity programs in general, you can visit our hydrosustainability.org website or just email us at sustainability@hydropower.org. This session was recorded and will be put on IHA's YouTube channel should you want to look at it at a later stage. So yeah, thank you again to all the panelists and the participants, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and bye-bye.